This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can check out sportshistorynetwork.com to find your next great podcast. We're adding new podcasts to the lineup all the time. The Sports History Network offers podcasts in a variety of sports, and you'll be able to find one that scratches that itch for your next great listen. Once again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com. It's July 2nd, and on this day in 1903, Major League Baseball player Ed Delahanty died when he fell off a railroad bridge over the Niagara River. There was some mystery about exactly how Ed Delahanty met his demise. Some say he was drunk and fell over the side. Others say he intentionally jumped, while there was one witness who contended he was pushed. Delahanty was at the tail end of his baseball career in 1903. He'd been, and to a certain extent was still, one of the most feared hitters in baseball. He was well known for being a bad ball hitter, not minding if a ball was out of the strike zone to take a swing at it. Legend had it, he would even step across the plate to swat a fat pitch into the outfield gap. He's one of only 3 players to win a batting title in the National League and the American League. He was a career .346 hitter over his 16-year career, which currently ranks him 8th all-time ahead of guys like Tris Speaker, Ted Williams, and Babe Ruth. He once hit a ball so hard, he split it in half. Now, at this point in the season, he was hitting .333 with a homer through 42 games. The Senators were not a good team. They were mired in the cellar and had been winless on a Midwest road trip when the team pulled into Cleveland on June 25th. It wasn't known at the time, but it would be Delahanty's final game. A few things to know here. Delahanty was not happy as a Washington Senator. Not only was he on a bad team, but he'd been denied a chance to go back to the National League to play with the New York Giants. The two leagues had just come to an agreement that restricted players from contract jumping to play for other teams in the other league. That agreement had prevented Delahanty from switching. Add to that, he was not in great shape. He was always short on cash and heavily in debt. His wife had recently left him, and he tended to salve his wounds by drinking a bit too much. After beating out the throw for an infield hit and then stealing second in the 4th inning on the 25th, Delahanty would go hitless in his final plate appearance in the 8th inning. It was a 4-0 loss for the Senators in a game described in the Cleveland paper as a most uninteresting game at League Park. Now, next to the story about the game the following day was a story about the peace treaty between the American and National Leagues that had prevented Ed from jumping teams had come to an end. Delahanty was listed as sick for the game on the 26th, and when he did not show up for the doubleheader on Saturday the 27th, nobody really seemed surprised. Everybody kind of figured he had gone off on a bender somewhere, and he'd be back eventually. When the team hopped on a ferry to cross Lake Erie and play the final games of their road trip in Detroit, Delahanty was still not back with them. Now, by that point, people had figured that he was on his way to join the Giants. No other sightings of Delahanty were noted until July 2nd. He was seen riding the train bound for New York City, and it was obvious that he had been drinking heavily. There was a report that he'd pulled a knife on one of the passengers. The train was stopped, and the conductor kicked Delahanty off the train. He started walking, and as he crossed the International Railway Bridge that connects Buffalo with Fort Erie, he went over the side. Now, most likely he lost his balance and went over the edge on his own because of his intoxication. But his life circumstances may have also caused him to go over intentionally. There was a report of a man following Delahanty that night, and there are some who believed he was robbed and murdered. His body was found 2 weeks later and 20 miles south of the bridge at the bottom of Niagara Falls. By that point, it took dental records to confirm his identity. Delahanty was 35. He was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1945, and the Philadelphia Phillies honored him in 1985, inducting him into their Wall of Honor. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1921, it was a fight so big, an arena was built just to stage it. So, a few elements to this fight that make it interesting. First, the promoter of this fight was a man by the name of Tex Rickard. The man knew how to sell, and he lived by the mantra, give the people what they want, the way they want it, and not the way you think best. He was Jack Dempsey's promoter, who was not a very popular fighter despite having won the heavyweight title in 1919. But you see, this came on the heels of World War I. Patriotism was near universal across the country, but Dempsey had been indicted in early 1920 for dodging the draft. The charge was eventually dropped, but he was labeled as a slacker by the American public for not pulling his weight in the war effort. So Rickard saw an opportunity. The Frenchman Georges Carpentier had been hailed as a war hero in France, winning numerous medals for his bravery and for being wounded twice while serving in the French Air Corps. So it was the war hero versus the draft evader, a battle of good and evil, even if it was his own man being labeled as the evil one in this one. And this fight really wasn't even supposed to take place on this day. It was supposed to take place in December of 1920 in New York. But there had been an election in November, and the new governor, Nathan Miller, did not approve of holding this fight in his state. Not because he found boxing distasteful, but because Dempsey and Carpentier were set to split $500,000 to work for a few minutes. Miller's paraphrased words, not mine, while thousands of New Yorkers were out of work. So instead, Rickard found a spot of land in New Jersey, constructed a bowl big enough to stuff 90,000 people in to watch this fight, called it Boyle's 30 Acres, and set the fight date for July 2nd, 1921. Now, the fight did fall short of capacity, but still, 80,000 people bought tickets to this one. They bought nearly $1.8 million in tickets, which was a record at that time and remained the record for gate sales to a boxing match for more than 60 years. This was also the first fight ever broadcast on the radio. Demand was so high for news of this fight that General Electric built the largest radio transmitter at the time to carry the signal to a relay. Ringside seats sold for $50 apiece. It was said at the time that there was more money represented per square foot than any event in sports history. When they finally stepped into the ring, Dempsey was more than 20 pounds heavier than the former light heavyweight. After a mostly quiet first two rounds, Dempsey began to punish Carpentier in the third, putting him on the mat twice. He was saved by the bell but barely made it back to his corner. In the fourth, Dempsey continued to punish Carpentier. He knocked him down a few seconds into the fourth. He got up at the count of 9. Dempsey swarmed him, hit him twice more, and the Frenchman was done. Dempsey retained the title, but it was really Rickard who won this one, coming out of the fight with pockets full of money and the reputation of being the best boxing promoter in the business. On this day in 1977, it was a contentious Wimbledon final between Jimmy Connors and Bjorn Borg. It was a hot one at the All England Club for this one. Borg was the defending champ. Connors had last won Wimbledon in 1974 when he was winning everything. Connors took the first set 6-3. Borg took control with his change of pace ground strokes, neutralizing Connors' power game to take the next two sets. Connors won the fourth 7-5, avoiding the tiebreak, which was fortunate considering how long this match already was at that point. In the fifth, it looked like Borg was going to cruise up 4-0 in the fifth, with Connors facing a break point down 30-40. But Jimmy dug deep, held serve, and then he broke Borg twice to even it up 4-4 in the decisive set. Connors had actually gotten the crowd on his side, pumping his fist after winning points and exhorting himself to go, come on. But then something weird happened. Connors lost the momentum with a double fault in the 9th game, and the crowd cheered. It really wasn't much of anything other than a polite clap, but Connors was not pleased with that, and he threw up the middle finger on his right hand to those seated closest to him. When Borg came to the net and finished off the next shot, the cheers for him grew louder, and Connors was cooked. He lost the next 2 points. Borg broke Connors' serve and then served out the match to win 6-4 in the 5th and secure his 2nd straight Wimbledon title. It was just the 3rd time Borg had beaten Connors in the previous 11 tries, but Borg's dominance was starting to come out. These two would meet again in the 78 finals, with Borg winning his 3rd straight Wimbledon championship. Interesting fact, 77 was the first year John McEnroe played at Wimbledon. He made the field as a qualifier and made it all the way through to the semifinals before losing in 4 sets to Connors. On this day in 1932, American Ellsworth Vines beat Englishman Henry Bunny Austin in straight sets to win the Wimbledon men's singles title. But Vines' excellent play was not what people were talking about before, during, or after this match. Instead, it was what the Englishman wore that caused a kerfuffle of sorts. The man that most knew as Bunny got tired of wearing the standard tennis attire of wool pants during the summer heat. And to be honest, it was really more of a traditional cricket uniform. So instead, Austin wore short pants during the final at Wimbledon, becoming the first to do so. He'd actually worn these shorts earlier in the fortnight, but playing in front of King George V and Queen Mary, well, it caused a bit of a stir, but not to the extent other players thought it might. When the King and Queen did not comment upon Austin's bare legs, that was seen as acceptance, and other male tennis players began wearing shorts soon after this match. And a couple of quick nuggets for you on this day in 1966. Billie Jean King won Wimbledon for the first time in her career. It was also her first major tennis title. On this day in both 1926 and 1930, Bobby Jones was given a ticker tape parade in New York City for his wins at the British Open. In 2000, Notah Begay won for the 2nd straight week on the PGA Tour, becoming the first player since his college roommate, Tiger Woods, won back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour in 1999. And in 1967, Catherine Lacoste became the first foreign winner and the first amateur to win the Women's U.S. Open. It was a nice 63rd birthday present for her father, René Lacoste, who is known not only for winning several tennis championships, but also as the designer and creator of the alligator emblazoned shirts that rose to popularity in the U.S. in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. George Washington was apparently a man of few words, at least in his 2nd term as president. His 2nd inaugural address was the shortest inaugural address on record. It was only 4 sentences and a total of 135 words. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.